A haunted crime scene. A missing officer. A story that won't let go. Dare to listen? I've been a cop for 23 years. In that time, I've seen things I still don't talk about. Things that claw at the edges of your dreams, that echo in the silence between radio calls. I've pulled broken bodies from burning cars, chased men with knives down dark alleyways, and been shot at more times than I care to count. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to what happened at the Addington house. We got the call late on a Tuesday night. Dispatch said it was a 911 hang-up from a landline, one of the few left in that part of town. The voice had been shaky, female. The only audible words were, "He's not my son anymore." Then the line went dead. Officers had already been dispatched, but they wanted me to back them up. I was the senior officer on shift. I didn't ask questions. I just got in the cruiser and drove. Addington was a neighborhood on the edge of town. Quiet, middle class, mostly retirees. Not the kind of place you expected violence. As I pulled onto Hollow Birch Lane, I saw the familiar red and blue strobes lighting up the otherwise still night. Officer Ramirez was already there, parked behind a white Dodge Caravan in the driveway. He was standing in the yard, flashlight drawn, eyes locked on the house. I joined him, and he barely looked at me. "There's something wrong," he said, his voice low and tight. I knocked. Heard something moving inside, like dragging. No one's come to the door. Any response to PA or lights? He shook his head. I studied the house. 2 stories, pale blue siding, a porch swing still swaying slightly as if someone had just left it. No movement in the windows, but every curtain was drawn shut. The porch light was flickering, like a dying heartbeat. I didn't know why it bothered me so much, but it did. We made our approach, guns holstered but hands hovering near. The front door was unlocked. Ramirez looked at me, and I gave him a nod. He pushed the door open. The smell hit us first. Death has a smell. If you've smelled it, you know. If you haven't, I can't explain it. It's not just rot. It's the smell of something wrong, something broken in the world. It seeps into your clothes, your hair, your soul. That house was soaked in it. We stepped inside. The entryway was neat. Shoes by the door. Family photos on the walls. A recent one showed a smiling couple with a teenage boy, maybe 16 or 17, standing between them. Everyone looked happy. Normal. I remember noticing that the boy's eyes seemed a little off. Too wide, like he wasn't really there. "Living room's clear," Ramirez said. His voice trembled despite his training. I swept the hallway. Doors closed. The dragging sound had stopped. We found the woman in the dining room. She was slumped in a chair, head tilted at a sharp angle, neck clearly broken. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. No blood. No bruising. Just gone. Peaceful almost. But her eyes were wide open, frozen in some final moment of horror. I checked her pulse. Nothing. She was cold. "Jesus," Ramirez muttered. "Who did this?" I didn't answer because just then we heard something upstairs. 3 slow thuds. Like footsteps, but heavier. I motioned for Ramirez to follow, and we made our way up. The stairs creaked under our boots, and each step felt like wading deeper into a frozen lake. At the top was a narrow hallway with 3 doors. One open, bathroom. One slightly ajar, bedroom. The last one, at the end, was closed. From behind that door came a low, rhythmic sound. Like whispering. But not in English. Not in any language I'd ever heard. I pushed open the bedroom door. It looked like a war zone. The bed was flipped, mattress slashed open. Drawers yanked from the dresser. Clothes scattered like a tornado had hit. Scratches covered the walls, deep gouges, some looking like they had been made with claws. The words, "Not my son," were carved again and again into the wallpaper, over and over until the patterns bled into each other. Ramirez stared, slack-jawed. "What the hell?" Then the door at the end of the hall slammed shut. We spun toward it, weapons drawn now. The whispering stopped. I called out, "This is the police! Open the door!" No response. I moved forward, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my vest. I reached the knob, hands slick with sweat. Lock. I nodded to Ramirez, and he gave the door a solid kick. It flew open, and the boy from the photo stood in the middle of the room, completely still. His face was blank, pale, eyes wide, no emotion, no recognition. He was covered in dark, crusted blood, some of it dry, some of it not. He held a small, carved wooden figure in his hands. It looked old, worn smooth by decades of handling. A symbol was etched into the forehead, a spiral inside a jagged triangle. I stepped in slowly. "Son, are you hurt?" He didn't blink, didn't move. Ramirez circled to his side. "We need to." That's when the kid screamed. Not a normal scream. Not a human scream. It was a screech of something that should not exist. Something primal and ancient and wrong. Ramirez dropped to his knees, clutching his ears. I felt it rip through me, like a blade of ice in my skull. I staggered back. The boy stepped forward, and then he was gone. Just gone. One blink, and there was nothing but the empty room. I swept it. Windows locked from the inside. Closet empty. No place to hide. Ramirez was shaking, whispering the Lord's Prayer under his breath. We searched the house again. No sign of the kid. But something had changed. The house felt wrong. Heavier. Like the air itself had turned to syrup. Our radios crackled, but every voice on them was garbled, distorted. One even sounded like me, whispering my own name. I called it in. Crime scene, suspected homicide. They said backup, detectives, forensic team. But no one ever found the boy. The blood on him didn't match his mother. It matched a woman who had disappeared 3 weeks prior across the state. And the wooden figure? It disappeared from evidence within a week. To this day, I don't know what happened in that house. But sometimes I hear things on the radio that shouldn't be there. Sometimes I see the boy in my dreams, holding that figure, whispering words that make my bones ache. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I drive past the Addington house, I swear I see the porch swing moving. Just slightly. Like someone still waiting. Waiting for him to come back. They sealed off the Addington house for weeks. Officially, it was classified as an active investigation. One confirmed deceased, one missing person presumed dangerous. But no charges were ever filed. No suspect identified. No one could explain how a teenage boy vanished into thin air, or why the physical evidence kept shifting, degrading, or outright disappearing. First, the carved figurine vanished from lockup. Then blood samples in the evidence freezer were found melted into a black, tar-like sludge. Surveillance footage taken at the scene showed static. Just static. I told myself I needed a break. I cashed in 2 weeks of unused vacation time, told my wife I just needed to rest. But I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that scream, the way it burrowed into your head like it didn't come from a mouth, but from inside your brain. I'd jolt awake in cold sweats, heart racing, sure that I'd hear whispering at the foot of the bed. One night I did. It was 2:14 a.m. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom. I hadn't turned on the light, didn't want to wake anyone. I passed by the hallway mirror and froze. There was a boy standing behind me. Not a reflection of me, a boy. Eyes wide, face blank, holding that same figurine, wood polished to a shine, the spiral and triangle etched deep in its forehead. I spun around. Nothing. But when I turned back to the mirror, he was still there. That night, I took the mirror off the wall and locked it in the garage. I didn't explain it to my wife. I couldn't. She already thought the job was breaking me. Maybe she was right. A week later, I got a call from Ramirez. He sounded off. Not just shaken, but different. Like he was speaking through a filter. "I need to talk to you," he said. "In person. Now!" We met at a diner on the edge of town. It was mostly empty except for a waitress and a man sleeping in a booth with a coffee gone cold. Ramirez looked like hell. Eyes red, beard growing in patches, hands trembling as he sipped his water. "I went back," he said. "Back where?" "That house. I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the kid. The symbol. That sound." I leaned in. "Ramirez, tell me you didn't go in." He stared at me like a man on the edge. "I didn't have to. It came out." I waited. "There's a trail behind the Addington property. Old, barely used anymore. Used to be where the power company ran cables underground. I found footprints. Bare feet. Blood smeared across the dirt. Like he'd been dragging something. Or himself. Jesus Christ. I followed them. About half a mile in, I found an old service tunnel. Locked with a rusted gate. But the lock had been melted. Melted? He nodded. I went inside. Just a little way. There were scratches on the walls, man. Deep. Like fingernails. Or claws. And the smell. Ramirez broke down then. Right there in the booth. Started crying like a child. I'd never seen him like that. Not even after the Addington scene. When he finally calmed down, he looked at me with empty eyes. "I don't think he's human anymore." I didn't know what to say. My mouth went dry. I'd had the same thought, hadn't I? The same sick, crawling fear that whatever that thing was, it had started as a boy but had become something else. Something ancient. Something wrong. I left the diner that night with a sick feeling in my gut. I told myself I'd never go back near that house again. 2 nights later, Ramirez went missing. His cruiser was found parked outside the Addington trailhead, driver's side door wide open, engine running. His radio was on, the speaker crackling with a static that almost sounded like whispering if you listened too long. They searched for days. Dogs, drones, foot patrols, nothing. Then they found his badge. It was sitting in the center of that same bedroom in the Addington house. No signs of forced entry. No prints. Nothing. Just the badge, perfectly centered on the wooden floor, and etched underneath it in fresh gouges. He followed me. I shouldn't have gone back, but I did. I waited until dark and parked a block away, walked the rest of the way in silence. The neighborhood was dead quiet. No porch lights. No traffic. Just the dull hum of power lines and the crunch of my boots on gravel. The Addington house stood dark, windows still boarded, porch swing still swaying gently in the night air, though there wasn't a breeze. I walked the side yard until I found the trail Ramirez mentioned. It looked barely used, overgrown with weeds and dead leaves. I followed it with my flashlight low and my gun drawn. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. No bugs. No birds. Even the wind seemed afraid to enter. Then I saw it. The gate. It was just as Ramirez described. Rusted, bent slightly open, the lock still hanging but corroded like something had burned it from the inside out. I stepped inside. The tunnel wasn't long, maybe 30 feet, but it was enough to feel the air change. It got colder, denser. I could see the scratch marks on the walls, long, jagged tears in the concrete. Something had lived here, or still did. Then the flashlight flickered, just for a second, but long enough to catch movement. At the end of the tunnel, hunched in the corner, was a figure. Small, pale, breathing slow and raspy. Its back was to me, bones protruding under thin skin, hair matted and soaked. It was rocking slightly. I raised my weapon, hand trembling. "Turn around! Now!" No response. I stepped closer. "Turn! Around!" It did, but it wasn't a boy. Its eyes were black. Not dark, black. Void-like. Endless. Its mouth was torn wide, lips stretched far beyond human limits, teeth jagged and uneven. And in its hand was another figure, carved. Different symbol this time. A circle inside a square, still bleeding. It didn't speak. It just smiled. And then the tunnel went dark. When I woke up, I was no longer in the tunnel. I was lying face up on the floor of the Addington living room, back stiff from the cold hardwood. My flashlight was still clutched in my right hand. My weapon was gone. Sunlight filtered through the boards nailed over the windows, giving the room a sickly, fractured glow. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My body felt disconnected, like waking up from surgery, conscious but distant. I blinked at the ceiling fan above me, which was slowly spinning though there was no electricity in the house. I sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. The wooden figurine, the one with the circle and the square, was sitting on the coffee table in front of me, drenched in what I was now certain was blood. I didn't remember leaving the tunnel. I didn't remember walking back to the house. I didn't remember collapsing. But the figurine, it had come with me, or brought me here. I wasn't sure which idea disturbed me more. I stood and took stock of my surroundings. The living room had changed. What was once a neat, dated family space was now warped and unrecognizable. The walls were covered in spirals, some drawn in marker, some carved, some smeared in something brownish red. All variations of the same symbol, shapes within shapes, triangles and circles, squares and spirals. I counted 11 different figures, all subtly different, all placed as if arranged with intent. And then I noticed the smell. It wasn't the sharp, decaying scent of death like before. This was different. Musky, sweet, rotting meat left under the sun. It was coming from the hallway. I should have left. I knew I should have walked out the front door and never looked back. But Ramirez was still missing. And part of me, the part that had worn a badge for 2 decades, refused to leave a man behind. I moved cautiously down the hall. The air got thicker with every step, and the hallway felt longer than it should have. I passed the same family photos I'd seen during the first visit, but something was off about them. In every photo, the boy's face was scratched out, not pixelated, clawed. Deep gouges dug through the glass and into the paper beneath, as if someone had ripped through them with nails or worse. The last photo was just the parents, holding a baby. It had been burned. Not just scratched, burned. The mother's eyes were gone, holes melted through the image. At the end of the hall was the basement door. It was open. I don't know why I went down. I wish I could say it was instinct, or duty, or even curiosity. But truthfully, it was something else. A pull? Like gravity, but sideways. Like my brain was being tilted, drawn down into the dark below. The steps were slick, each one covered in a thin layer of condensation. My flashlight flickered again, but didn't go out this time. The beam swept across walls covered in mold and old insulation. There were children's toys in the corner, wooden blocks, dolls with glassy eyes, a plastic truck with a broken wheel, and in the center of the basement was a door. Not a doorway, a literal, freestanding door. Built into nothing, standing upright in the middle of the room, like it had been dragged here from another world and just left. It was tall, older than the house itself, by the look of it. The wood was cracked and warped, and the doorknob was made of something black and porous, volcanic rock, maybe. It hummed. I don't know how else to describe it. The air around it vibrated like a tuning fork, the low frequency rattling in my chest cavity. There was something behind that door. I knew it. I felt it. And someone had left a note taped to the front in shaky red ink. Do not open. He is not finished. My instinct screamed at me to turn around, to go back up those stairs, back to the world I understood. But the humming grew louder the longer I stared at the door. Not with volume, but with presence. Like it was aware of me, listening. Then something moved behind it. A soft scrape, like nails on wood, followed by breathing. Slow, labored. I backed up toward the stairs, keeping my light trained on the door. That's when I heard a voice. At first, it sounded like static, then whispers, then words, though I couldn't place the language. They poured through the walls, from the ceiling, the floor, my own skull. I gripped my head and closed my eyes, but I still heard it. Not with my ears, with my bones. When I opened my eyes, Ramirez was standing in front of the door. He looked dead, skin pale, eyes sunken, badge still pinned to his chest, now tarnished and dark. His lips parted slowly, like it hurt to speak. I tried to leave, he rasped. He wouldn't let me. I couldn't breathe. Who? The boy? Ramirez shook his head slowly. Not a boy anymore. Never was. He's something old. Something left behind. My hands trembled. What does he want? Ramirez looked at me, and for a second, his eyes cleared. To be remembered. Behind the door, something slammed against the wood. The whole room shook. Dust fell from the rafters. Ramirez didn't flinch. He turned and placed his hand on the knob. No! I stepped forward, but it was too late. The door swung open, but there was no room behind it. Just blackness. Endless. Deep. Moving. A shape began to emerge. No, not a shape. A presence. Vast and fluid, like smoke underwater. Tendrils of shadow coiled out from the doorframe, stretching across the floor, up the walls, brushing against Ramirez's legs. He didn't scream, didn't run. He just smiled. A cracked, ruined smile. He remembers you too, he said, and the darkness took him. I didn't run. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew deep down there was nowhere to run to. When Ramirez vanished into that swirling blackness, when the thing behind the door reached for him with tendrils that moved like thoughts instead of limbs, I felt something inside me snap. The part that believed in rules, in structure, in safety. I was alone in the basement now. The door stood wide open, but the thing behind it had retreated, at least physically. The black mass had recoiled like smoke sucking back into a vent, but it left its presence behind. The air had changed. Heavy, buzzing with pressure like I was 10 stories underwater. The walls vibrated. I could hear something whispering from the ceiling joists, the foundation, the pipes, a language that sounded older than sound itself. And worst of all, the door wouldn't close. I tried. I gripped the edges and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. The frame wasn't connected to anything. It just was, standing there in the middle of the room like some freestanding altar to the void. I wasn't even sure if it had hinges anymore. When I looked closely, the wood itself pulsed subtly, like it was breathing. That's when I noticed the new carvings. The symbols had changed again. The spiral inside the triangle was still there, faintly, but now it had multiplied. Fractured into hundreds of miniature variations, each etched with disturbing precision into the floor around the door like an activation circle. Some looked mathematical. Others looked like runes. One, I swear, looked like an exact replica of my police badge number. The same number that was engraved on Ramirez's badge. I needed to get out. I staggered up the stairs, my legs numb, my thoughts muddy. My flashlight had died, but the house itself glowed faintly now with a sick amber hue, like a candle burning behind rotted flesh. I stepped into the living room, and the furniture had moved. The couch was gone. The television, too. The wallpaper peeled in long strips. The wooden figurine on the coffee table was gone, but something else sat in its place now. A Polaroid photo, old and curled at the edges. It showed a group of uniformed men. Cops. 5 of them. One of them was me. I stared at it, confused, because I didn't remember ever posing for this, but there I was. Ramirez was there too. So was a third man, Officer Elijah Stroud. I hadn't thought of him in years. He went missing in 2007 after responding to a call-out in the Ironwoods near the state line. Never found. The remaining 2 officers in the photo were unfamiliar to me, but both had blank faces. Literally. Their heads were pale ovals, like the film had failed to capture their features. But something told me that wasn't an error. That was intentional. I turned the photo over. Scrawled in red ink was a date, March 3rd, 1985, and a phrase underneath. Only 5 doors remain. My skin prickled. March 3rd, 1985. That was 2 years before I was even born. The room began to spin. That was when my radio, my police-issued Motorola that hadn't worked since the tunnel, screeched to life. The speaker crackled, then hissed. Then, slowly, a voice leaked through the static. A child's voice. Soft, flat, male. I remember you, Officer Graham. You didn't save me. I dropped the radio. It landed with a thud, but the voice continued. Louder now. Not from the speaker anymore. I called for help. I asked you to come, but you waited too long. You didn't believe me. I don't even know who you are. I shouted. My voice echoed in the rotten walls, thick and foreign in my own throat. You do. You saw me in the mirror. I turned to the hallway mirror, the one that had been removed during the initial investigation, locked in evidence. It was back, rehung on the wall, flawless, untouched, and in the reflection, I wasn't alone. A small figure stood directly behind me, barefoot, eyes wide and glossy black. Blood dripped slowly from its mouth onto the floor, where it pooled into the same circular symbol carved onto the basement floor. I spun, but nothing was there. The mirror remained unchanged. Except now, there was writing on the glass. Foggy letters forming in slow, careful loops. He's still watching through you. I backed away, barely breathing. The mirror began to shake, rattling against the wall studs, as if something inside was trying to push through. I turned and bolted out the front door. It flung open with ease, like the house was letting me go. I sprinted down the sidewalk toward my car, heart hammering so loud it muted everything else. But the second I reached the driver's side door, I knew something was wrong. The windows were fogged from the inside. I yanked open the door, and every window shattered at once. Not inward, outward. Glass exploded into the street like something had erupted from within. A wave of freezing air slammed into my face, bringing with it a stench like damp soil and burnt hair. My cruiser was empty, save for one thing in the passenger seat, another figurine. But this one was different. It was me, wearing my uniform, holding my flashlight, and the head was missing. I didn't drive home that night. Instead, I checked into a motel 2 towns over, slept with the lights on, the TV playing static, gun on the nightstand. I barely slept, and when I did, I saw Ramirez again, but not as he was. He was longer, his limbs too stretched, his mouth split too wide. And in that dream, he wasn't in the house. He was in the woods, standing under a black tree covered in wind chimes made of bone. He spoke once. "There are 5 doors. You've seen one." The motel didn't help. I checked out after 2 nights. Not because I felt safe, but because the air vents started whispering my name while I was brushing my teeth. The clerk didn't blink when I handed back the key. Either he didn't care, or I wasn't the first haunted man to pass through there. I drove aimlessly for a while after that. Coffee shops, empty lots, old patrol routes. Part of me was waiting for another call, some sign, some instruction. But the radio stayed silent, and the phone only rang once, an unknown number. I didn't answer. I knew I had to go back to headquarters. Had to see if anyone else had been getting the calls, the whispers, the visions. Maybe someone else had dealt with something like this. I wasn't the only old-timer on the force. Plenty of retired guys who'd seen decades of strangeness buried in unsolved cases. But when I walked through those doors, something felt hollow. Everything looked normal. Phones ringing, officers typing, radios crackling. But there was a haze over the station, a strange stillness beneath the noise. And when I passed the evidence room, I saw the light flicker. That room had always bothered me, ever since Ramirez and I brought back the first figurine and tagged it for storage. It never belonged there. It wasn't part of any logic chain. Not a weapon, not a tool, not evidence of a crime. Just a totem, a witness. And now there were more. I swiped my access card and entered. Rows of shelves, manila boxes, tagged items, photos. And then, in locker 13B, my assigned lockup space, I saw them. 4 figurines, each with a different symbol, each carved from different wood, and each one was a person I recognized. One was Ramirez, face long and scared. One was Stroud, the missing officer from 2007. One was me, same one from the car, head still gone. And the last was a woman. I didn't recognize her at first, until I looked closer. She wore a worn police-issued coat, dated late 1980s. Name tag scratched out, but I knew that face. From an old academy photo, shoved in a dusty archive file we used for prank wall decorations during rookie hazings. Her name was Officer Dana Marks. She had vanished in 1989 while responding to a domestic call in West Belridge. They said she ran off, resigned suddenly, but she never cleaned out her locker. Her car was found idling with the lights on. And now, she had a figurine too. I pulled the box out and laid it on the floor. Under the 4 figurines were dozens of old documents, yellowed and brittle. Some were handwritten reports, others typed on faded letterhead that hadn't been used since the 70s. All of them had one phrase written somewhere in red. Door 4, I scanned one report. Officer James Dwyer, 1961, responded to a rural burglary call. Found the house empty except for a wooden archway standing in the barn. Claimed to have heard his own voice whispering his badge number from the other side. Was institutionalized 3 weeks later after attempting to seal his eyes shut with epoxy. Another, Deputy Karen Gwynn, 1974, described being followed by the door. Drew dozens of sketches of it. freestanding, disconnected, sometimes in her bedroom, sometimes at work, once in the middle of the road. She died of a brain aneurysm in her squad car, staring at a blank stretch of highway. The last line of her report read, "They are not doors. They are mouths." I felt sick. All this time. Decades. This thing had been visiting officers, whispering to them, showing them things, drawing them in, using the illusion of law, of authority, to mask itself while it fed. I dug deeper into the box and found the cassette tape. It was unmarked. No case. Just a strip of red tape across the top with the number 4 written in marker. My hand shook as I slipped it into the old department player, a unit that hadn't been used in probably 15 years. The tape clicked. Static. Humming. Then a voice. Female. Calm. "This is Officer Dana Marks, badge 11872. If you're hearing this, it means you've seen the door." That's how it starts. The door shows up. Then the figurine. Then the whispers. If it's gotten to the dreams, you're already marked. There's no stopping it. You can only delay it. You can run, but the doors don't follow time. They show up where you've already been. They know you. They grew with you. Click. Then nothing but white noise. I hit rewind, then play again. Same message. No ending. No explanation. Just that chilling truth, it knows me. When I looked back at the figurines, a 5th one had appeared in the box. I hadn't heard anyone enter. But there it was. Still warm. Still wet. It was the woman from the Addington house. The mother. And her mouth was stitched shut. I didn't go home after that. I didn't go anywhere. I slept in the interrogation room that night. Lights on, blinds drawn, door locked from the inside. But I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the 5th door. I hadn't seen it in the real world yet, but I could feel it. Closed. Waiting. In my dreams, it was different. This one wasn't in a basement or a tunnel. It stood in a hospital hallway. Clean white tiles. Flickering fluorescent bulbs. And a soft wheezing sound behind it, like a child on a ventilator. The knob was shaped like an open hand, palm up. And behind that door, I heard my name. Not spoken. Begged. The next morning, a new case came across the desk. A domestic disturbance call. A woman screaming, "He's not my husband anymore." The address? Addington Lane. But not the same house. 3 doors down. 3 doors down. I parked 2 blocks away. Didn't turn on the cruiser lights. Didn't radio in. I needed to approach this one like I wasn't a cop. Because whatever this thing was, it loved cops. It craved structure. Protocol. Order. Because the closer we are to rules, the easier we are to bend. Addington Lane was silent. Too silent. Not even birds. Not even the usual hum of sprinklers or distant lawnmowers. Just stale heat on cracked pavement and the pressure behind my ears building like I was 50 feet underwater. I walked up the sidewalk slowly, heart pounding, sweat crawling down my back. The house looked like every other suburban relic. Faded shutters, a porch light left on during daylight, and a mailbox leaning open like a yawning mouth. The number 1720 was nailed sideways on the doorframe, but I could feel it before I touched the knob. A pulse, a presence, like a heart beating just beneath the stucco. I knocked. No answer. Then I heard the whisper again. Low, deep, right behind the door. It didn't say my name this time. It said, "You shouldn't have come alone." The knob turned on its own. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just deliberate. I drew my sidearm and pushed through the door, gun raised. The living room was clean. fresh flowers on the table, a baby gate at the hallway. But the air was wrong, cold and thick, like breathing through wet cloth. Then I saw the figurines, dozens, on every shelf, on the floor, in the fireplace, carved in wood, some in clay, some twisted from bits of bone and wire. Everyone had stitched mouths, and everyone faced a wall where a massive door was bolted into the drywall. It didn't belong. Too tall, 8 feet at least, old wood, rotted and cracked, and a strange circular sigil was drawn in black ash across its surface. At its center was a lock, shaped like an open eye. My gun felt useless. I lowered it. Something on the floor caught my eye. A tape recorder, identical to the one in the evidence room. I pressed play. This is Officer Dana Marks. Second recording. If you're here, you've made it to door 4. That's where they try to trick you. They'll show you things that shouldn't exist. You're dead. Your regrets, your worst nights on replay. You must not open it. Even if you think it's a victim. Even if you hear yourself inside, screaming for help. It's not you. It's not real. It wants your voice. I heard footsteps behind me. I spun. Nothing. Then a sound from behind the door, this time louder. A baby crying, and then another sound, my own voice shouting, "Help! I'm in here." I stepped closer, gun shaking. The crying grew louder. I looked down. One of the figurines was twitching, just barely, but enough. It was of a baby, wrapped in cloth, its eyes gouged out. I backed away. The door began to pulse. Once, twice, like it was breathing. I could hear every terrible call I'd ever been on echoing from behind it. Cries of abused women, tortured addicts, and broken children, all mashed together into a grotesque chorus of pain. I turned to leave. I had to. But the hallway behind me wasn't the same. It stretched on, impossibly long. Warped, faded wallpaper with names scrawled across it in charcoal. Every name, a cop I'd known. Some alive, some dead, some disappeared. Ramirez, Stroud, Marks, and me. My name was there too, at the very end of the hall, right beside a mirror. But the mirror didn't show me. It showed him, the figure from the tunnel, still faceless, still stitched, now holding something. My badge. He placed it into the wood of the door like a key, and the eye lock blinked. The door creaked, and behind it, I saw something move. Not walk, not step, just exist. A shape, all limbs, no symmetry, a thing beyond understanding. And then it spoke, not through the air, but inside my skull. You protected the living long enough. Now protect me. I screamed, fired my weapon 3 times at the door. The bullets didn't hit wood. They vanished midair. The figurine shattered at once. And then I was back outside, in the driveway. The house was gone. Just an empty lot with dead grass and yellow tape. I stumbled back toward my car. A rookie officer approached, wide-eyed. Sir, are you okay? I thought you were out on sick leave. What are you doing here? I blinked, looked down. My hands were empty. No gun, no badge. Who called in the domestic? I stammered. The rookie looked confused. There was no domestic here, sir. This house was condemned. Fire 2 years ago. Nothing left. But there was a woman. A child. Figurines. He shook his head. I think you might need to sit down. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't been back to the station. They think I cracked. PTSD, maybe worse. I'm being evaluated, but I know better. I've seen door 4, and now I can hear the 5th one. It knocks. Only once a night, around 3:17 a.m. Always from a different wall, never from the same place twice. And when I checked the bathroom mirror this morning, there was a figurine on the sink. New, still wet. It was me again, but this time, my mouth was stitched shut too. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. Like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Would you dare open the door? Still here? Then you deserve a warning, because tomorrow's story might be even worse. Here's a snippet of what's to come. The sheriff said the place was just an old farmhouse, abandoned since the 70s. But the air was still warm inside, like someone had just left. And on the kitchen table, a plate of meat, still bleeding.